Hi, this is Carl with another SOP video for managed service providers. Today I want to talk about the miscellaneous software you use for running your company, specifically the office part of your company. There are, generally speaking, three classes of software that you're going to use in your IT business. First of all, you have the core software that makes you an MSP. So that would be your professional services automation tool, your remote monitoring and patch management tool, right? Those are tools that you use to actually deliver what we call managed services. The second class of tools that you have are all of the things that are other tools used by the service department. So for example, you should have a previously approved tools for how your company addresses viruses, how your company deals with remote administration, how your company manages remote phone calls or video calls. I'll put links down below to those various videos that we've already covered. But today I want to talk about running the office and some rules to help you be more successful and more profitable in the long run. Remember, one of the most important things you have to do when you're running a business is provide consistency, not just consistency across your team, but consistency over time. Consistency is one of those factors that most people don't think about. Who cares if it's Word or Google Docs or something else? Who cares if it's Excel or some Google spreadsheet? Who cares which brand of video editing software or audio editing software or whatever? Well, you should care. Here's why. First of all, remember my definition of branding is that branding is every single thing you do in your company. So branding is the way you talk to customers, the way you deliver support, the way that you document things, so forth and so on. And so you should have previously approved tools for all of these things. It's not because you're a control freak. I'm not saying you're not. But just because you need consistency doesn't mean that you've gone overboard. Consistency allows you to make sure that 5 years from now, somebody can find and open a file, and they're not going to have to go find some tool to say, how was this created and where was it stored and who has access to that document? So let's look at a few rules to help you select software for this category of software within the office side of your business. The brand of software can be a huge thing. So think about, for example, are you a Microsoft shop? If you're a Microsoft shop, there really isn't a reason to use something other than Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and their key features. If you really need to make a decision about using some other brand of tool, it should be because it's outside the category of the core office products. So brand is one thing. Another is accessibility. You need to make sure that you're always going to be able to get to the documents that are created with this software. So that means, for example, that you need to make sure that your video is edited with a tool set that you're going to be able to have access to. That's why something like Adobe or Camtasia, you know long term you're going to be able to have access to that and that you're going to be able to fine-tune those files, reopen the original files, so forth and so on. Brand name makes a big difference with regard to all that. But when I talk about accessibility, I'm also talking about where it's stored. One of the biggest problems we see at our clients all the time is that data is being scattered all over the place. It used to be that we worried because somebody brought in a 250 gig hard drive and plugged it into a USB port. Now that's a 2 terabyte hard drive, and it's the same problem. We are losing control of the data. But a more modern version of that exact same problem is that people are sending themselves files, some by Google Docs, some by Dropbox, some by their personal Azure account, some by who knows what. And so they're not using the official storage system defined by your company. And it may be your problem if you're not actually defining what is allowed and what is not. People should never be allowed to just take your data, send it to themselves by any means that they choose. So be sure that your employees understand that there's an approved way that they access data. It can only be in certain places, and it can only be in certain formats created with certain tools. This is not being too picky or too detail-oriented. This is about consistency and long-term access to your data. Another thing to consider is how you license the data. So, for example, do you get this from Microsoft as part of your Microsoft Action Pack, or did you buy a separate license somewhere along the line so that you've got a commercial version of Microsoft 365? Or other kinds of software, do you license the Adobe Suite? Do you license other kinds of programs to create information within your company? And what happens when that license runs out? In many, many cases with new cloud offerings in software in the last 10 years, when your license runs out, your access runs out. So it's one thing to store the data in a common place, but you also have to make sure that you have the license to access it. I'm a big fan of having your storage in one place and then being careful that you maintain the right software licenses to make sure that you can access stuff. I don't think we're ever going to not be able to open up a Microsoft Word file, but I don't know what the future holds. I used to use a program called Paint Shop Pro, and so I have these PSP files, and it can be a little troublesome to get them open, especially the really old ones. Also, along the lines of licensing that software, make sure that it's licensed in the business name so that if you sell the business, administrator@company.com will still have access to that licensing, to that those files. In general, I think that's a best practice for your clients as well, but definitely make sure you start at home by getting in the habit of making sure all of your software is licensed to the company with the email of administrator@company.com. Again, consistency is your friend. It also drives profitability. For Small Biz Thoughts, this is Carl Polachuk wishing you the best of luck in your managed service business. Here's your checklist for this video. Like, subscribe, share it with your friends, ring that bell to make sure you don't miss anything, and visit us at sopforsmb.com.